defensible health claims are very different than drug application claims, right?
Yeah.
It's important to know that that true ingredients that are bioactive rich still go through a very similar process. So we're not just finding something guessing.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with David Brown, Vice President of Business Development at Brightseed. David, how you doing today?
I'm great, Andrew. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my distinct pleasure. Appreciate you spending some time with us on Business Ninjas. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and about Brightseed.
I've got a long, rich history of being in sales and being in business development and sales development. I've worked in kind of the startup world now for a while, different levels of startups. I mean, anything from seed stage up to where I'm at now at Brightseed, which is a well-funded Series B, biotech startup. My background, my education is in nutrition science, so I spent a lot of time in the lab. So I kind of came out and became, a sales professional that enjoyed selling science, right? Being the mouth of the scientist, right? Instead of the hands and the pipettes in the lab. In Brightseed, I joined recently. Brightseed is a biotech that is discovering bioactive compounds, mainly in plants, which is similar to what drug discovery is, but the difference is that we're looking for healthy bioactive compounds in food, in supplements, and in things that we can do every day as healthy individuals, not reliant on drugs and disease states. So it's a really exciting health play that's also very biotech focused.
Oh, that's fascinating and fabulous. And I can't think of a more important thing to be doing. What's the origin story of Brightseed? How long have they been around?
Brightseed is now in our 7th year. The origin story is quite fascinating. There's 3 founders, Jim Flatt, Sophia Elizondo, and Lee Che. They all come from different kind of rich backgrounds. Jim was at a company called Martech Biosciences. They were the first to really commercialize DHA, which is a omega-3 fatty acid. It's in infant formulas and in all sorts of products now. He kind of pioneered that product. So I guess sort of the father of omega-3s in the world, which pretty much everybody knows about these days. And Lee comes through Cal Berkeley and Stanford as a specialist in computational chemistry, AI, and machine learning. And he was one of the first to really use machine learning to start profiling plants and phytonutrients. Wow. And what they can do for human health. And so he's kind of the mastermind behind our AI now that we use at Brightseed. And Sophia is a amazing leader that comes by the Boston Consulting Group, and so has a rich history in doing managed consulting work. So it's this beautiful blend, and they came together to start Brightseed to really go and dive into this what we call the black matter of nature, which is all these unknown compounds that are in plants that we eat every day. And so those 3 heads are trying to solve that problem.
Yeah, I think science makes it pretty clear. As much as humans think they know about what's going on planet Earth, there's far more that we have no idea about.
No idea.
and who are your clients? What sort of verticals are you servicing? At what point is your technology and your developments, how is that coming to market?
Yeah, good question. So I'll step back and tell you that our discovery process is very similar to how small molecules are discovered for drug discovery programs in pharmaceutical applications. The difference is that though we do work with a couple pharmaceutical companies, what really we're doing is working with big food, ag, consumer health verticals. So some of the public ones that we've announced out there are companies like ADM, companies like Cargill. We work with companies like Ocean Spray, right? Nestle Health Sciences. So a lot of the big movers and shakers in our food chain is who we're currently working with. Yeah.
And because these are naturally occurring compounds and things, is there less of a restriction in terms of the FDA, in terms of bringing them to market? Is it a faster process from discovery to actual market?
Absolutely, absolutely. Defensible health claims are very different than drug application claims, right?
Yeah.
Though it's important to know that that true ingredients that are bioactive rich still go through a very similar process. So we're not just finding something, guessing, and then hoping you eat, right? We go through the same process of discovery computationally. Then we do what we call validation, which is in a biolab. We do bioassays and basically seeing what it does to cells.
Sure.
Then we transfer that into different kind of in vivo models, which are usually animal models, rat studies, things like that. And then the final is we go through gold standard clinical studies, just like the drug discovery process. Ultimately, though, we don't have that long clinical cycle required by the FDA to ultimately treat a disease state. That's
Right. So the answer is you're doing just as much due diligence, but when it's included in a product, someone doesn't have to read off some side effects the way they do for every drug these days.
Exactly right, and that's a good point because when you're doing drug discovery, you're usually you're playing with functions in the body that can have lots of different side effects that they're not always intended, right? Because they're looking at new biopathways plus new small molecule discovery and many other things other than small molecule. Because we're working in food, right? We still have to look at things like bioavailability and things like that, but we're seeing results as a whole, and that's typically in things like chronic disease. We know that heart disease, we know that diabetes, we know lots of chronic things related to obesity are because of having poor diets. So can we not only change those things by having healthier diets and what we know is healthy, but can we actually solve things like scientifically with bioactives, right? I think that's the piece that we're trying to unlock.
Excellent. Typically, I'll ask what makes you stand out from your competition. I know that's a funny market to think of as competitive, but there are other people in the space. What differentiates Brightseed?
Yeah, I think it's taking a pharmaceutical type approach to molecule discovery and applying that to food science, to ag, to supplements, things like that. That's new and novel. Not a lot of people do that. The biggest difference is that, we study what's called metabolomics, which is basically studying metabolites and putting them through what's called, mass spectrometry. And that's how you can figure out what compounds, what fractions are doing what, when you go to validate them, right? A lot of companies, they just do targeted. So they'll just guess. They'll be like, okay, I know there's a molecule in there. Let's go figure out if it's there, what the quantity is, and does it do anything for health? So it's really just kind of poking around the dark with a needle versus taking this big wide net approach. And so that by itself is unique. There's not really anybody else that does that in the food world. But a competitor that's doing it in proteomics, so looking at proteins, not metabolites. And they're also doing really well. Also, companies called Neuritas, and we're kind of doing the same thing, just from a different approach. And then there's lots of companies, biotechs, that do this in drug discovery, but of course, completely different targets and angles than what we're looking at.
Gotcha. Understood. Well, let's switch gears for a second. I'm hoping that because this is sort of a lab-based thing, that COVID didn't have such a dramatic impact on Brightseed's ability to do its thing for the last couple of years. Let's dive a little more into your partnerships with your clients. What does an engagement with Brightseed look like? What are companies trying to accomplish, and how do you go about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Depends on the company, but almost all of them are looking for the same thing. That's something new and novel that can be patented, that can be protected, that's natural and that's effective all at the same time. Because if you think about it, today, a lot of the food and supplement companies that are out there, they're playing with the same ingredients, and their idea of innovation is things like packaging or flavor. They don't innovate a lot in health because it's long and it's expensive. And so what we do is we shorten those timeframes where, from the time you're doing early discovery up and through until a product is commercialized, that can be 5 to 7 years in that cycle for some of these big companies. We're trying to shorten that down to 3 years, and make it less expensive, right? So when they engage with us, they're looking at us to be an innovative partner that can take their innovation to a new level that's faster, so they can get new products on the market. And all of us are excited to support that, because that's getting new healthy choices onto the shelves for, for our consumers and for the health of, the world, right? So it's a very natural partnership.
I have to ask a question. So you referred to patent and protection. We're talking about naturally occurring compounds. How does that work?
Great question. Yeah. My patent attorney may not agree with what I'm about to say, but I will just keep it as high level as I can. She's be like, Dave, why did you talk about this? Yeah, you're absolutely right. Can't patent nature. That can't do that. If it's existing in nature, you can't do it. What the patent things are: the process by which you can get to that compound, the targets, right? Like the health benefits that come from those targets, and then also the last piece that can be patented is if it goes into a purified extraction of some sort. So if it's made, and if it ends up being made synthetically, or if it's extracted, from a ferment process or something like that.
Gotcha. Understand. Let's switch gears into the marketing lane for a second. You've had some multiple rounds of successful funding. What role has content played in the growth of Brightseed? How are you telling your story?
It's an incredibly important role because we're actually not just a B2B company. We're telling a consumer story about bioactives. And so content around bioactives and being able to educate consumers specifically around bioactivity as just common nomenclature is a monumental effort. And so when we look at content, we've created kind of this adjacent bioactive brand. And so we've created a bioactive coalition. We've brought all these people that are specialists and nutrition scientists, around the country to sit in that coalition. And our ultimate goal is to create enough content that bioactives become normal part of healthy living, just like vitamins and minerals. So we say vitamins, minerals, and bioactives will be kind of the future. So content around that is absolutely paramount. What we create for social media channels, what we create at shows, what we create for our partnerships, so important.
That's important education. I mean, the term bioavailability, a lot of people don't understand. Just because you consume something doesn't mean 100% of its beneficial qualities are bioavailable in your bloodstream. It just doesn't work that way.
No, absolutely true. And bioavailability that's the piece that comes last. So I actually will touch on that. That it's an important part of bioactivity. When we think about bioactivity, again, it's not like a drug where you can just think about, okay, I'm going to synthetically make a new molecule and give it to somebody and it'll treat a disease state. Bioavailability and what happens when you eat something and digest it, and then what happens in your body, and then what is the specific benefit. We pay very close attention to that. So when we are looking for like a feed source or a new plant or something that's going to be able to provide bioactivity, we're very careful about looking at what's currently in the food chain. What is relevant? Commercial relevancy, there's an economic model, right? You can't just say, oh, we found this beautiful flower in the Himalayas and now it's going to, cure obesity. Like, no, it's not. There's no scalability there. We have no idea what the bioavailability is. So we have to take all of those things into account as we take, discovery into commercialization. And so we're always thinking about that.
Excellent. All right, let's look a year down the road. What are some things you'd like to be celebrating personally and professionally?
Oh, yeah. Well, personally, I'd like to still have a wonderful marriage, a wonderful career, see my kids grow up and continue to be great athletes. And all of that has to do with, work-life balance. And so I'm always striving for that, of course. Professionally, and for Brightseed, we're a Series B company. And so we have very specific fundable milestones to reach for our next round of fundraising, which will happen, in 25, 26. Our Series C is probably going to be something substantial, and we're going to need to be able to tell the story that Brightseed is delivering actual commercial products, and that we're seeing relative like health gains, right? I mean, it's so important. Like we want to connect the dots here. We're not just doing this as an academic exercise, right? So I would say I would love to see some strategic partnerships that we become a true arm of innovation for some of the largest companies in the world, like Nestle and ADM, like I talked about before. I really love to see a dozen or so of those. And I'd love to see the Brightseed, the Brightseed ingredients on the market. And I'd love to see hopefully we can do some co-branding and talk about Brightseed as the engine that drove, a new effective ingredient. There's something just very exciting and romantic about that we're doing some real good in the world.
Those are lofty and fabulous goals, and I wish you all the best in achieving them. Please tell us, what's your URL? Where can people find Brightseed, and what social media outlets you're using these days as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's brightseedbio.com is where you can visit our website, and there's a few different ways that we can guide you through, our science, our technology, our pipeline, learn about some of our partners. There's amazing case studies on there. We're active on social media, on Instagram and on LinkedIn. It's our two main channels. And you can find us at upcoming shows. So anybody that's in the ingredient world that's listening to this, we will be at Supply Side West in Las Vegas in October, the largest ingredient show in the world. We'll have a booth there. I'll be there, and we'll be visiting with hundreds of people. It should be very exciting.
Excellent. David Brown of Brightseed, thank you for what you do. You're rippling the pool in fantastic ways. I wish you and yours all the best in the future. Let me know how it goes on the search for the elusive work-life balance. And all the best to Brightseed.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate being here.
My pleasure.